What if the most toxic relationship in your life isn't with a person, but with something you've been drinking? In our most personal episode yet, we're staging an intervention, not just with alcohol, but with the dangerous myths and hidden toxins that are silently destroying our health and potential. Amanda Kuda returns to help us break the substance that has been gaslighting an entire generation. We're diving deep into the uncomfortable truths about addiction, environmental risks, and the medical misinformation that may be holding us hostage.
The Discovery Doc Podcast, where your journey to empowered, non-toxic living begins. Join me, Dr. CeCe, a doctor of nursing practice, self-proclaimed toxin tamer, and mama of four alongside
Me, Annah Kate, your medical mystery overachiever. Together, we'll uncover the latest in functional medicine, debunk health myths, tame toxins, and provide practical tips for thriving in a modern world.
Get ready to take control of your health with expert insights, raw stories, and actionable wellness strategies designed to help you and your family lead vibrant, toxin-free lives.
Let's discover together. Welcome back to the Discovery Doc Podcast. This week, we continue our conversation with Amanda Kuda, a wildly successful alcohol-free coach. And she promised us that this week that we would talk about your CNS.
Why are you so close to me?
I don't know.
You just got so close to me.
Because I love you.
So last episode, I love where we left off because we started to go into the importance of regulating your central nervous system and just using whatever your time, your finances, whatever it might be to really help you grow and develop. And we talk a lot, whether it's on this podcast or in my practice, about regulating your central nervous system as relates to healing. And I'm a firm believer that if our central nervous system is dysregulated, we will never, it doesn't matter what labs look like, how they're changing, how things are gone or better, we will not feel that if we are not regulated. So Amanda, I would love to dive into just how certain techniques that regulate our central nervous system, how can you relate that to living an alcohol-free life or empowering us to fulfill whatever our desires are in terms of our relationship with alcohol?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that the thing that we fail to realize is that we use alcohol so often to bypass emotional processes that we really need to get through. So whether that is anxiety, stress, grief, heartache, so often our own response or even the response of our well-meaning friends is, oh, let's get you a drink. And what we do when we drink to bypass that level of discomfort, or even the level of discomfort of social anxiety, wanting to be a little more outgoing, or maybe you're feeling exhausted and want to bypass the feeling of exhaustion so that you can keep going to this event or, do your second shift as a mom, a working mom, that you've already done your day job and now you have to do your night domestic duties. Whatever it is that you're using alcohol to bypass, it's only doing that. It's cheating your way through those things. It's not an actual solution. So, what we have to do is we have to figure out, what are you using alcohol to bypass, and how can we help you actually get the skills you need to do those activities with confidence and ease, so that you don't feel like you need alcohol anymore. And this is the intimidating part of the alcohol-free journey that a lot of people miss. So they'll check the box of abstinence and they'll do that for a while, but without implementing some of these nervous system regulation tools and practices, and even just acknowledging where you've been lacking is a really great first step. Even just that acknowledging of, oh, alcohol didn't really help cure my grief or my stress. It just numbed it for a little while and caused it to boomerang back around. Until we acknowledge that and realize that we have to do maybe some unsexy things to help ourselves feel better in the long run, we're going to keep getting sucked back into the alcohol kind of seduction game. And so the first step that I would always recommend is for you to sit down and kind of do an inventory of what are you using alcohol to emotionally avoid or achieve. And so usually we're avoiding uncomfortable feelings, anxiety, stress, overwhelm, frustration, incompatibility, maybe with a person or a conversation. We're using it to achieve ease, relaxation, whatever it is that you use. You might use alcohol to move toward favorably. And you have to say to yourself, okay, I know that alcohol actually isn't creating these things. And when I tell myself the story that I need something outside of myself to achieve or avoid these emotions, I'm actually disempowering myself. And that's a self-esteem issue. So first we have to start at the level of self-esteem before we even get to the into the nervous system, because I want everyone to acknowledge that even if you're an outwardly confident individual, if you've been using alcohol to avoid or achieve something, you've been saying, hey, self, you're actually, you're not capable of doing that on your own. So let's get some help outside of ourselves. And so I really just want to acknowledge that. And there are so many tools that we can use with our, ourselves, a therapist. There's a really great book called The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem that I would recommend that everyone reads. Yeah, brilliant. It looks like very old school, but trust me, just go ahead and buy it no matter what the cover looks like. And it will help you kind of understand, where am I lacking with self-esteem? And then from there, you can start to resource yourself with emotional regulation tools. And the one that I love the most, that is kind of counterintuitive and weird, because when we say emotional regulation, I think a lot of people, for whatever reason, go to meditation, which I think is really important and really great. But if you're someone who has been trying to basically turn the switch of an emotion off rapidly, and then you decide that you're going to just try and sit there and experience it, it's going to be a little overwhelming for you to just sit with an emotion that you've been using an off switch to numb out for ages, if not longer. So the tool that I really love is emotional freedom technique, or EFT. Do either of you ladies use that tool?
I love that. Yes.
Yes, we got some tapping here in the background. I love tapping for this purpose, because it takes us from wherever level you're at, and you do rate whatever level you're at of experience of that emotion. And it helps you to just down regulate, not only from a physicality standpoint, because you're doing these trigger points of the tapping, but also from an emotional standpoint, because you're going through this series of kind of mantras or statements that are helping you turn from the world is terrible and everything is crumbling around me to, hey, but what if the world wasn't so terrible and everything wasn't crumbling around me? So it's one of the most productive processes that I can recommend, because it does take you progressively down on a scale versus just trying to talk yourself out of an emotion or shut off an emotion. And I think that is always going to be my number one. It's what I found most effective, but it is a little weird when you get started with it.
Oh, I am so the weirdo.
No, yeah.
In all the places. I'm tapping, I'm beating on myself. I'm doing the chicken dance, get my liver, stimulating, getting my body, swinging my arms, doing all kinds of stuff.
Me and the kids have dance parties where we just flail our arms and get all that out.
Yep.
But
humming and singing and doing all of the things. So be weird with us, please.
Be weird.
Yes.
Because it also depends on the person. We were just talking about this on a different episode, but I am someone who breath work is really great for me. More hypnotherapy type of just remarks to myself is really great for me. But for my daughter and for my husband, they are one of my daughters, their brains work a little bit differently than mine. So I actually, when my 3-year-old gets into this heightened emotional state, she's not one where you can just breathe. She knows how to. I've taught her and she can do it, but it doesn't bring her down. Tapping brings her down. Squeezing, hugs bring her down. That tactile stimulation brings her down quicker. So it's also getting to know your body and your mental state and what works for you. What works for one person is not the same as what works for somebody else. When you were talking, I had a question, because what we mentioned earlier was, okay, alcohol can cover some of these emotions, or can really synthetically reproduce some of these emotions or feelings that we want and that we desire. What would you say to the person who simply thinks drinking is fun, that they are not, they don't think they have a problem, they don't think they're masking any sort of emotion, or not trying to achieve, quote unquote, achieve anything, but they simply think it is fun to be in that social setting, to have a drink? What would you say to that person?
Well, I would say a couple of things. That if things that we've been talking about do not resonate with you at all, that if it feels that it's your path in this lifetime to just have fun and party, do whatever feels good for you. And I also have some unfortunate news that if something isn't fun, a person or a situation, without alcohol, then it's probably just not fun. And we trick ourselves into thinking that alcohol elevates an experience or makes it more fun. But really what it's doing is it's making a boring experience tolerable. And so I know it's a hard hitter. It is not a fun one to hear. But if you think about all of the things that you do as a drinker, now there will be some things that you do actually enjoy, but maybe you just don't enjoy them in all the same contexts. I love to dance. And I probably would, if I stayed up past 11 p.m., I probably would still go to the clubs and dance. But unfortunately, I'm in bed at that point. So I have to find different ways to express that desire and that way to have fun. But when I'll speak for myself, but this is a common experience. When I went out and tried to do the same things as a non-drinker that I did as a drinker, what I realized is, wait a second, this environment actually is I'm a highly sensitive person. So this is actually overstimulating.
Mhm.
I think I was just drinking to make myself dumb to the fact that I'm incredibly overstimulated and I'm not feeling connected to my peers here, because you have to yell and talk so loud to even have a conversation that none of the conversation is meaningful. We're just kind of yammering on about unimportant things. And at my core, I like to have big, important conversations. That's how I like to connect to people. So really, what I was doing is I was settling for a social activity where I was around people. But at the end of those events, I would leave feeling lonelier than when I went in, because I didn't get to connect. And I could have made that mean that I was awkward or not popular or not cool. But what I decided to make it mean is what my reality is that is just not the way that I connect with people, because it's nearly impossible to connect with someone.
Right.
And if I'm someone who wants to connect, then can't I manufacture situations like inviting my friends on walks or to coffee or to places with good acoustics so that I can hang out with them in a way that feels good to me? And once I made that shift, wow, my relationships changed, my perspective of fun changed. And I can still be the life of the party if I want to. And if the party ends before 11 p.m., but I choose my battles now. And I wouldn't even say I choose my battles. I pick what I think is fun. And I had to figure out what that was first versus trying to fit myself into a box of what other people told me was fun.
Right.
Yeah, I'm not going to make it to that party. I'm in bed at 8:30.
Oh, yeah.
No, I'm with you. Lights out.
Yes, I don't have any ounce of me that wants to be out past that time anymore in life. So kind of a deeper dive question.
This is our deep dive question.
There we go. There are words. We have touched on a couple of these, but what are some of the biggest benefits that you have seen, whether in yourself or coaching, that our listeners could expect in terms of mind, body, spirit, soul, just how they could feel when the casual drinker breaks up with alcohol? What can that look like?
So on my main method of approach has always been part of my spiritual journey. And so I think that just for me, regardless of, what you believe spiritually, religiously, that your deepest spiritual connection is with
our
your own
inability
intuition.
to say words rubs off on people.
I caught the bug. is the connection to your own intuition. And I was not connected to that whatsoever as a drinker. I was following the crowd. I was doing whatever anyone else wanted. I always needed to really pull the audience when it came to making a decision for myself. And even just that ability to tap into my own sense of intuitive knowing has been a game changer. And I also, use that as a mechanism to tap into communication with whatever I choose as a higher power. You can choose to go to that level or not. But how I like to explain it is that connection to your intuition is always there. But when you're drinking alcohol, you muffle it. So it's as if you've given yourself a cell phone in a cave and you're trying to connect to your intuition. It's going to be a scratchy, muffled connection. Versus if you remove alcohol from that equation, now you're on the top of the line cell phone next to, regardless of how healthy this is, depending on what your biohacker views are, next to a really great cell phone tower. And you're going to get really, really clear reception then.
Through the EMFs.
Yes.
Clear intuition connection.
Yes.
That's right. You got your EMF blocker on, but you have your strong cell phone connection. And so you're there and you just feel more grounded because you're connected to yourself. And I think that was the biggest game changer. But also in terms of, just your emotional resilience, we talked about, of course, already emotional regulation, but on the daily, my sense of resilience and regulation is just so much more calm and peaceful and easeful. Things that used to throw me off track. Now I kind of look at them, and of course I've matured and things have changed, but I mean, there are certain things that I've experienced as a drinker and now as a non-drinker that it would have agitated me and really shaken me up. And now as a non-drinker, it just kind of rolls off my shoulder. And I'm like, oh, whatever. Like I've got that, because I built up that self-esteem muscle that has proven to me that no matter what life throws at me, that I can handle it. And I didn't have that as a drinker, because when life threw me a curveball, I was having a drink. And now I don't need that to handle things. So my emotional resilience is greater. And that's allowed me to have deeper relationships with people. It changed how I show up in my relationships. It's allowed me to do some tremendous healing in relationships that were troublesome in my life. And professionally, I think another huge thing is I was doing great in my career. I was checking all of the boxes and doing all of the things that someone would have accounted for as a good life. But I had these big dreams on my heart. I knew I was not meant to work, for me, at a corporate job. I was really struggling in the corporate environment. I knew that I wanted to write a book. And I've known that since I was in second grade. So this is a multi-decade thing that's showing up for me. And I was able to accomplish that in less than 5 years as a non-drinker. It just skyrocketed my ability to manifest my dreams and to bring them into reality. And that's also really special and powerful. So if you want to feel better, be a stronger partner, be a stronger mother, be a stronger person in your career, I know that this is one of the fastest ways to get you there if you really commit to it.
Mic drop.
Yep.
We have one other segment left with Amanda. This one will be a good one. So you guys stay tuned. All about dry January, which I love. It's kind of a full circle moment because that's where your journey initially started, which is so cool. So stay tuned for that, guys, as we dive into dry January next week on the Discovery Doc podcast.
Mm-hmm. Do you have a wellness dilemma for the Discovery Doc to answer or a guest to solve? Share your question and query on our podcast page at thediscoverydoc.com. We're continuing our exploration of the toxin tamer Paraquat toxin.
That was good.
Yeah, we'll go with that. Examining why it's crucial to be aware of the toxins and their impact on your health and well-being. So let's continue our conversation of why we need to be so aware of Paraquat and why we need to address it for the health of our families.
Yes. Okay. So in episode 1, again, not fear mongering, but if you ingest this, it will literally kill you instantly. Okay. So first of all, that just should say everything. If we can ingest just a little amount of it and it can actually kill us, but we're spraying it on things that we eat, and it doesn't just magically dissipate. It doesn't just magically go away. Yes, this is for weed control, right? And so they're not using it to grow our foods, but they're using it to get away with the weeds that are interfering with growing the food. But it doesn't just magically dissipate and not absorb into the soil, where then we're not, ever coming in contact with any sort of tidbits of it. I digress.
And they have to be in full EPA garb to spray this stuff.
People are actually not. Human flaggers are not allowed anymore. So we'll get into that for a second later. Not right now. I have other things to say first.
Okay,
yes.
say the
but
things.
All the regulations around it should, like, if there are that many regulations, why are we even using it? Anywho, Paraquat, what it does when it's ingested is it causes direct damage when it comes in contact with the lining of the mouth, the stomach, and the intestines. When it enters the body, it spreads to all other areas of the body and causes toxic chemical reactions to occur throughout the body, mostly lungs, liver, kidneys. Lung. We have one lung. 2 lungs.
2 lungs. And if you get it into your system that deep, then your kidneys cannot filter out this.
I meant liver. I thought I said livers. So when I went back, I said lungs, but I meant liver.
We have 2 lungs,
we have
1 liver, and 2 kidneys.
Yeah, you would
most
think
of us.
I'm kind of good at my job, but not in this sentence. I'm not. I thought I put the S on the wrong syllable. I put the S on the livers. But I didn't.
It's all good. But if this gets into your kidneys, then it's very hard for your body to process it. And then there's dialysis and all the things that have to happen if they catch it in time. And that's not a guarantee either.
Yeah, there is no antidote for it if you do ingest it. So the level of Paraquat poisoning depends on the amount, where someone is exposed, how they're exposed, how long they're exposed, etc. It also depends on their personal health condition and just kind of where they're at in their health journey when they were exposed to it. However, even a minimal amount of exposure, we have a laundry list, y'all buckle up, a minimal amount of exposure, okay, Not a ton. You don't have to be a worker. You could be someone who has a house that is within 200 miles of these farms. Yes.
That's pretty close.
Where we can have links to skin cancer, thyroid cancer, heart failure, kidney failure, liver failure, lung scarring, acute kidney failure, confusion, coma, rapid heart rate, muscle weakness, pulmonary edema, respiratory failure. That is ultimately what leads to death when it's ingested. Let me be clear. Seizures, vomiting, diarrhea, dehydration, electrolyte abnormalities, etc. The most notable, however, and where it is perking up a lot of interest right now, is irreversible brain damage and Parkinson's. Sit with that for a second. Paraquat exposure increases the risk of developing Parkinson's between 200 and 600% increase.
And this is totally avoidable.
Totally avoidable. Totally avoidable. We're just choosing to do it when there are different alternatives.
Oh, you know why they're choosing to do it? Money, money,
Money,
money.
Money! Who let us have a podcast?
I don't know. I'm so glad they did, though. This is fun.
Oh my gosh. So not only, again, are the farm workers at high risk, very high risk of developing Parkinson's, but so are their family members who live in close proximity to the crops that are being sprayed. And exposure of, especially the mileage radius of which you can be exposed to it, depends on the wind, right? So I'll talk about that in a second, because the EPA did put parameters. No, I'm going to talk about it right now. The EPA put parameters on, what do they call it? Like the basically like the off gassing or basically the off gassing of this. What they did was they put a label on the bottle that said, hey, we know that this can cause damage to an ecological risk to mammals, birds, terrestrial, invertebrates, terrestrial plants, and algae.
Terrestrial. She's saying terrestrial.
Extraterrestrial.
You did not get all those letters out.
No, I didn't.
Terrestrial,
I'm so excited.
invertebrates, terrestrial plants, and algae.
Yes, she calms me down. So we know that it can be harmful to these things. We've known since 2019. So they literally just slapped a, quote, spray drift management label to reduce, that's supposed to magically reduce the amount of drifting of the toxic chemical. So they put a label on the bottle, and that's supposed to stop the air from spreading at places. So it's to warn the people who are using it that this can happen.
So don't use it on a windy day, but get it all over you and put your clothes in the laundry and give it to the rest of your family and cause brain damage to everybody that lives in your household.
So exposure within 1,600 feet has increased Parkinson's risk by 75%.
And direct exposure is 200 to 600%.
Yes.
So indirect exposure increases by 75%. That's nuts. And we don't have to use this.
We don't have to use it. And this is what gets me is the EPA. So Paraquat and other herbicides have to be registered with the EPA, right? And since the original registration, the EPA has reviewed and reassessed the safety. Every 15 years they do this. Okay. So it's not like a yearly review. It's not every 5 years. It's every 15 years. And right now it's kind of been undergoing registration review. But it's so toxic that every time they do it, every 15 years, more and more regulations and restrictions are made and stipulations are made on where we can use it, how we can use it. So for example, prior to 2021, it was used on golf courses. How many freaking people on the planet play golf and you're out there for 8 hours in the day and you have kids who are learning to play golf and whatever. But now, since 2021, magically, oh no, now it has to be applied by a certified applicator. Now it cannot be transferred into any food or drink container because people accidentally ingested it when it looked like it was in a drink container and
looks
died.
like Gatorade.
Yeah. And they
Not that you should be drinking Gatorade either, but don't mix chemicals. Leave them in their original bottles.
Yes. And now it has to be kept in secured locations. Now it can't be used in homes, gardens, playgrounds, schools, parks, or golf courses now. But previously it was. So it takes, every time this chemical is reviewed, it gets harsher and harsher restrictions on it. At what point do we just ban it?
Well, and more people are getting sick over these 15 years.
Yes.
Because they're exposed to it unnecessarily.
Yes.
Yeah. So why don't we ban it?
I don't do our government. Can you answer that question, please? Because other countries are, which I'll give you a rundown of that in the next episode. But it gets so frustrating because we know the literature behind this. We know that this is a chemical that is deadly to humans. We know that it's linked to so many adverse effects. And we know, again, that it does not just dissipate after a few days. They put restrictions. You can't enter and there's certain restrictions for crops other than cotton. Cotton, they let it like run rampant. There are less restrictions on cotton than on other things, which is crazy because we wear cotton. We wear it everywhere. Anyways, so they have a limitation where people can't like go into these fields after 7 days of spraying Paraquat. We know that it's that toxic, right? Do you think the soil just forgets that this toxic chemical was sprayed all over it to kill everything on it? What
happens when it rains and ozone and the earth breathes? Because that's what happens when there's a storm and it rains. The earth breathes ozone. I mean, there's a whole thing that happens. I just call it breathing, but because it's fresh and it's all the things. But then you're breathing it in because it's all been disturbed and pushed back up into the air because the ground has been disturbed.
Yes. And
then the wind blows.
8 billion pounds of it. This is not like a localized little corner of the United States somewhere. It's 8 billion pounds across numerous states.
And we're getting produce from other states.
Yes.
So we get Michigan blueberries and strawberries and all not that Michigan was not on this list, but I'm just saying we are such a food diverse, nutrient devoid grocery store that we're getting things in seasons that they don't grow from places that do
are using
Paraquat.
Paraquat. So I have one last little tidbit there in our next episode that goes further in depth as to what countries have banned it and what we can do and what I think we're going to try to encourage you to do based on this information.
Yep. So we'll see you next week. Stay tuned. Stay informed and inspired. Subscribe to our mailing list at thediscoverydoc.com to give exclusive access to Dr. CeCe's top picks and swaps for the season directly into your inbox. In this installment of Medical Myth Busting, prepare to have your beliefs challenged and your knowledge expanded as we expose the reality behind the persistent health myths. All right. This one is a little touchy. She's got a 1-2 punch this week and next week, so make sure that you stick around. So,
sorry, guys.
I'm going to let you say this one because I don't want to be on the record saying it. No.
No, it's true. I'm going to say it very... We are going to ruffle some feathers here. What I want to talk about, so I'm not going to call it a myth, but what I want to talk about is the relationship between vaccines and autism. Okay, that's a huge thing right now. And you have two completely different sides. One side says, no, it's absolutely not possible. Vaccines don't cause autism. And then you have another side that's like, no, they absolutely do cause autism. And what I want to do is I want to come in between and just share my clinical experience on the subject. So huge disclaimer, this is not medical advice. This is not based on literature. This is not based on anything other than my personal opinion and what I have seen clinically. And that is it. It is education for you. Yes.
I have a question. Sorry.
You have a question already?
I do. So
I was only doing a disclaimer.
Well, I want to ask the question of if I can get it out, do vaccines have additional things in there that don't actually need to be in there that could be causing?
You're asking this already?
I am.
Okay, ask that later. Hold, please. It's a great question, guys. We'll get there.
I have questions.
We have questions. Okay. But I need to be very, very clear. This is not based on literature. This is not anything I learned in school. This is strictly opinion that I have seen and things I've witnessed clinically. So do with it as you may. Anywho, I will not make the statement that vaccines cause autism. What I will comment on is that I have personally seen children regress post-vaccination. So you can say what you want, but my clinical experience is my clinical experience, and the things that I have witnessed and seen are true. Okay. What my beliefs then are in terms of vaccines in relation to autism are that vaccines can act as a cherry on top. And it tends to be kind of this perfect storm of events. We have let's say, this is a true story. So we have a baby who was, normal delivery, regular pregnancy and delivery, had an abscess at birth, which needed to be drained, was put on antibiotics for the first 3 weeks of life, had recurrent ear infections, recurrent strep infections, had eczema by the time this baby was 6 months old, was vaccinated according to the CDC schedule. And then around the 12-month mark, got that set of vaccines. And quickly, I saw the regression verbally in terms of eye contact, babbling, social behavior. This baby did go from developing neurotypically in terms of communication and eye contact to completely within 24, 48 hours, nonverbal. Okay. Now, there were no other variables at the time besides that 12-month set of vaccines. However, am I going to blame that vaccine in that moment? No, I'm going to blame the entire story, the entire history of that child, what occurred in that first year of life. And it was this perfect snowball of events that led to immune dysfunction in this baby, that then led to that baby not being able to tolerate that vaccine in that moment, like many other babies do, which is just fine. That is where the hiccup is in our system, is that we are all different people. We all have different genetics. We all have different detox abilities. We all have different methylation panels and pathways and the ability to activate or deactivate information that's coming into our system. We all have different metabolisms. We all have different viral and bacterial and parasitic exposures. We all have different environmental exposures. So for me, if you come and you give a blanket treatment for every single child on this planet, you cannot give me the argument that every single child is going to react the same. That is not true. Every single human on this planet will not react the same to vitamin D supplement. Right. It's not a bash on vaccines, but it's just to assume that every single child or every single human on the planet will react in the same positive way. That is where I find fault. Because clinically, I have seen it be a trigger. And it may not be from the deactivated pathogen within that immunization, but like AK was asking, it could be a reaction to the added ingredients. In terms of science, yes, those added ingredients are there for a reason, to make the vaccine work better, to make the immunity stick for longer. But some of those ingredients, such as aluminum phosphate, aluminum hydroxide, formaldehyde, polysorbate 80, thimerosal, mercury.
Yum. Why are we putting these into our body?
Or human diploid cells. You cannot tell me that every child who receives that information with 100% certainty that every child on this planet will react the same way, again, in a positive way, with us being completely different beings. So yes, those ingredients have been studied. Yes, they are, added at the percentage that is allowed by our government to say, hey, it's below the risk factor. But who is that risk factor for?
No.
Is that risk factor for me, for you, for my 2-year-old, for my newborn? Who is that risk factor for? Who is the standard of that risk factor when we are all genetically different from one another? So that is my 2 cents on that topic. I want to make this very clear, I'm pro medical freedom. So I am pro you deciding what is right for your family. I'm not anti anything. I don't think it's anybody's business whether you choose to vaccinate or not, besides between you and your medical provider. I just wish that there was more conversation in regards to the fact that we are all different. And that poses then risk factors of one person receiving a treatment, again, whether it's a vaccine or a supplement, versus somebody else. Those risk factors are different. And I'll leave one more kind of example because this is personal, is that I was never told that I was fully vaccinated as a kid. And then I went into to be a medical scribe, I don't know, when I was like 21 or something. And they pulled my titers, which just means blood work to prove that I was immune to these different pathogens, even though I gave them my records, and I was not immune to measles, mumps, rubella, or diphtheria. So for me, those antibodies did not stick, even though I was fully vaccinated. On the spot, I received MMR and Tdap, And a month later, my hair started falling out. Now, for me, looking back and evaluating medically that time in my life, I absolutely believe that the MMR vaccine was a trigger for me. Reason being is because I was never told that someone who has a first-degree relative who has an autoimmune disease really shouldn't get the MMR vaccine. My mom has Hashimoto's. My grandma had Hashimoto's. Guess what happened to me at 21 years old after receiving the MMR vaccine?
She got Hashimoto's.
I got Hashimoto's, which is supposed to be just a 60-plus, woman disease, not a 21-year-old. So for me, it absolutely was autoimmune inducing. I at least wish there was that conversation. With my first 2 kids, when I went into the pediatrician's office, those conversations weren't had. I wasn't asked, hey, do you have an autoimmune disease? And I didn't know this at the time. I wasn't asked anything about my history. I wasn't educated or told, hey, there are stipulations already in place of who it's not appropriate to vaccinate at this time. Those conversations are not had. It's not common knowledge. So even, if we're not even expressing that as practitioners,
how are you supposed to know how to empower yourself to ask the questions of, is this safe if this is happening? So while you had the MMR, so I have a high D dimer, so I cannot get a vaccine. I didn't find that out till I was 38.
Yeah.
So I've gotten vaccines my whole life, and they could have killed me. And no one told my mom, or no one did a test to tell her that, hey, your daughter has a high D dimer, which is clotting factor and kind of all the additional things that go along with that. So we know now, but how would you explain that to a parent? Oh, we gave your daughter a vaccine to help save her life and it killed her because we didn't give you, mom, all of the information that you needed. So now you know to ask certain questions and get, like do methylation testing if things aren't working out or things have changed. Like find out, get the answers, do the groundwork. And if a doctor's not giving you the answer, find another doctor.
Yes. So there are providers out there. We are told and taught that this is a blanket statement. This is what's done. This is when it's done. It's safe. Every kid does it at this age, and that just is what it is. Medicine should never be that. Again, take away the word vaccine because people get super triggered by that. Medicine should never be that, whether it's an antibiotic, an herb, a supplement.
One dose does not fit all. We've talked about this. Go listen to that episode.
We've talked about this. So to assume, again, that every child would react the same is ridiculous. So if your provider is against an open conversation, that is a wrong provider. There are providers out there who will stand in your corner and have open conversation. Let's discuss this. Let's talk about it. What are your fears? What are your concerns? Is this appropriate for your child at this time? Is a delayed schedule more appropriate? There's wonderful books out there that have tons of research behind them that are proven to be more effective in terms of doing a delayed schedule. So this isn't a black or white thing where it's either you do it or you don't. There are safe ways if you choose to, the big keywords, if you choose to implement them where you understand your baby or your body a little bit better. There are providers who can help you do that and lay that groundwork. We do exist. It's just about finding us and just finding someone who will have an open conversation, who will dive into the research with you, who will be open to your concerns or the research that you've done and help you make a decision in regards to your specific child.
Yep. You are empowered and equipped to have this conversation.
Yes.
So until next time, let's discover together. Become an insider at thediscoverydoc.com and receive exclusive bonuses and offers from me directly into your inbox. Don't miss this list. It will close. Today, Amanda has shown us that breaking up with alcohol isn't just about removing a substance. It's about reclaiming your power, your health, and your narrative. We've exposed the hidden dangers of Paraquat, dismantled the dangerous myths linking vaccines to autism, and provided a roadmap for those ready to choose themselves over a destructive habit. Before diving deeper into the wellness world, let's pause for a quick disclaimer. The information shared on this podcast is for general informational and entertainment purposes only. While we love being your Discovery Doc allies, we're not here to replace your doctor or healthcare provider. Consider us your fellow health explorers, sharing our findings as we uncover the mysteries of well-being. Always consult with a qualified medical professional before taking any action based on the content of this podcast. Just like an archaeological dig, this disclaimer may change occasionally, so be sure to check back for updates. Stay healthy, stay curious, and keep exploring with the Discovery Doc.